Assalamu alaikum, Elena here, the Muslim travel girl. With everything going on around the world and the fact that we cannot travel because it's vital we keep safe, I thought, why not create a series of all the places I would love to visit once this pandemic is over and we can travel? So here we are. Welcome to your Muslim-friendly version of Wanderlust Wednesday, where every Wednesday we'll interview another awesome Muslim traveler about their experiences in a city around the world. Some of the people we're meeting are either living in the city or have visited as Muslim travelers. So hopefully we'll get a lot of insider tips as well. We will ask them all the vital questions on how Muslim-friendly the city is, if they found difficulty finding halal food or mosques to pray, and of course, other things such as transportation, local tips that I'm sure you want to know before you visit a city. The questions are pretty standard each week and you will find them in the description below, so hopefully you can follow easier this way. In this series, my hope is to inspire you to visit a new place once we can travel again and enjoy them equipped with new information. I'm so excited to introduce this series to you, and without further ado, let's get started. Assalamu alaikum everyone. I am so glad you're joining us for this series, for this episode. And today we have Nico, a YouTuber with a channel called Nicolle, and she is going to be talking to us about Singapore, a place that she really loved, and she wants to share her tips with us. Assalamu alaikum, Nico.
Walaikum salam. Thank you very much for having me on your series.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Totally my pleasure. So today we're talking about Singapore. Why did you decide to visit Singapore?
The first time I went was actually in 2011 with my parents. My parents always want to go somewhere sunny, they're sun seekers. So we wanted to go somewhere a little bit different. We went to Singapore and I just fell in love with it so much that I decided to apply for my master's and go back to study my master's in 2013.
Wow, that's amazing. So you actually, how long did you spend in Singapore?
2 years.
Wow, fantastic. So you're pretty much local, let's say, to Singapore.
I don't know about that.
So how do you find Singapore? I know Singapore is super popular with Muslim travelers. It's very close to like many popular destinations like Malaysia. But do you think it's a Muslim friendly destination? And do you think others should visit it?
Absolutely, definitely. I 100% recommend it. The population, I think there's 15% is Muslim, but we think that it's more because there's so many people from all over the world who visit there, especially from Malaysia and Indian subcontinent and Indonesia. It just feels like a Muslim country, to be honest. It's a good like balance of the culture because they have the Chinese influence, the Indian, the Malaysian, everything's just a huge melting pot. It's just so interesting, so much heritage.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I know they actually have quite a good balance of, coexistence of different religion and different cultures. And it's quite a nice mix. So you're 100% right on that one. It's fantastic.
I just feel so tolerant.
Yes, I think that's very important. So as a Muslim traveler, what are the top 5 things that a Muslim should actually visit in Singapore when they go? Because there's so many places.
So the first thing, and I'm going to sound like so greedy, is obviously the food. The food is just amazing. And everywhere you go, it's halal. Especially if you go to like the hawker markets, like in some places, in some countries, people feel a little bit nervous about eating from like stalls or street food. But Singapore is such a clean country. It has such strict hygiene regulations that you like don't feel scared at all to eat from a stall, and it just feels so like normal. And some of them are even Michelin stars. So definitely I recommend going to the hawker market to try the food. And obviously it's from all over the world, so you can try something you never expected in Singapore.
Yeah, which is good.
Absolutely. And if you love food, it's definitely the place to go.
Fantastic.
The second thing, so personally, I'm really into history and kind of culture, and there are a lot of museums in Singapore. It's maybe not the number one thing people would think of to do in Singapore, but the one that I really enjoyed most was the Asian Civilizations Museum, because I think it's kind of like less of a tourist hotspot, and it's kind of quaint, and it's like the whole Asian region rather than just Singapore. So you can learn so much from like this museum, and it's like in a beautiful colonial style building. It's really nice.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's something I didn't know.
Yeah, it's something people maybe miss out. The third thing is obviously the most Instagrammable thing, which is the gardens by the bay.
Of course.
But what people perhaps don't know is there are two sections to the Gardens by the Bay. There's the south section, which has like the famous life tree, which are the big light up trees with the plants inside. And it's just so amazing because it just makes you appreciate creation, all of these plants. It's just, wow.
Yeah.
But if you walk kind of 20 minutes across the river, you get to the east side of the Gardens by the Bay and you get a view of the whole skyline of Singapore. And especially at sunset, it's just magical.
Wow. So east side of Gardens by the Bay and at sunset.
Yes, Gardens by the Bay at sunset. It's
Fantastic.
definitely a must do. The fourth thing, probably for tourists, especially if you're just there for a couple of days, I really recommend a walking tour. Because Singapore has so many different areas. Like they have Chinatown, they have Little India, they have like Haji Lane, which is like the Arab area, and then of course like the Sultan Mosque, which is kind of like symbolic in Singapore. And by doing a walking tour, number one, you don't get lost. Number two, you don't miss anything. Number three, you get like the culture, the history, like while you're walking around. And number four, like a lot of them incorporate kind of like an experience as well, like a tea house or trying some local cuisine. And I really recommend like booking one of those tours.
I actually thoroughly agree with that, because walking tours for me are kind of like the best way to get a feel for the city from a local perspective before you kind of like venture on your own. So I highly recommend a walking tour, because there's such a good way of like asking for tips and, you know, safety or halal food or whatever it might be. So you kind of find your feet for then exploring on your own. So that's a fantastic tip.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to go back.
Yeah, exactly. Because then you can go on your own and just venture on your own, but at least you kind of know the history, you know what to look for. Very good.
Definitely. So my last tip is probably to stay. Okay, so the locals in Singapore take staycations like quite regularly. They'll just go to a hotel and they'll have like 1 or 2 nights, especially on holidays or weekends. But if you're going to go to Singapore, have at least 1 night on Sentosa Island, because it's just shows you kind of like, one of the reasons I love Singapore is the mix. Like it's the beautiful city, but you've got the beach, you've got like the laid back side to it, which is Sentosa. And especially if you have like children or anything like that, they've got Universal Studios, they've got water parks, but also it shows you kind of traditional Singapore, because it was kind of like a jungle-ish rainforest island before it was, you know, built upon. Yeah. And they still have the wild monkeys and the trees, and it's really great to see all of that come together.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I was looking actually at Sentosa when I was planning my trip to Singapore, which I had to cancel, but I was planning on visiting Sentosa. How far is it? So if you were a tourist, would you recommend, for example, staying in Sentosa for 2-3 days and getting this done, or for a day and then going to Singapore and kind of explore rather than commute?
I think it's a matter of preference, because it is so easy to go from Sentosa to kind of the main city of Singapore. You can get on the bus, you can even walk if you're feeling like energetic. So I think it's easy, but if you want kind of like that beach kind of aspect to your holiday, or if you solely want like to stay within the city and just have 1 day to kind of see another side to it, I think it's a preference thing.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, it does make sense. It's a preference thing. It's just, for me, it was like, oh, can you stay in Sentosa and then visit? But obviously you can't visit. And we actually touched on transportation. So how easy is Singapore to navigate, you know, public transportation and, you know, walk around? Is it friendly, or do you need to take Ubers, taxis, cars, etc.?
I think it's really easy personally. I think the public transport system is great, and it's also affordable. It's not very confusing, like you can figure it out, especially get the app on your phone or even just ask somebody, because everybody is so friendly. I also find the taxis compared to some other destinations are reasonable, so that is an option. But one of the like little facts about Singapore is it's really difficult for people to get a car. It costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of time, because they try to limit the number of cars on the road, because it's a small island and pollution, etc., etc. So they do make it so easy and widely available for public transport.
For public transport, yes. It makes sense. I mean, personally, I think I prefer using a public transport in a new place that I go, because then you kind of get a real feel of the city rather than, navigating on Ubers or cars all the time. And you're right. I mean, Singapore is not a huge country.
No.
You can easily navigate it. That's great. I know we also touched on the halal food, and you said that there are places. So as a Muslim traveler, you wouldn't have an issue finding halal food anywhere in Singapore.
No, not at all. And there's like places that locals would really recommend. For example, if you go to the market, you'll be really overwhelmed at first. You'll say, wow, like, where am I supposed to eat? It's so busy. There's so many places. But you can literally just like go up to somebody waiting in the queue and say, hey, what are you queuing for? Why is this queue so long? And they'll just be so happy to tell you, oh, I really recommend you get this. And that's like a really helpful way to find something good to eat.
You're 100% right, because one of the reasons why I'm doing this series as well is I want to get a local perspective from people who've already been there, because I find that the best way to actually experience a city is through local tips of where to eat, what to eat. So yeah, asking around what they're queuing for, because I always wonder, sometimes I'm like, why are they queuing? If they're queuing, that means it's good. So we should queue. Yeah,
you don't want to get stuck in a queue and then you get to the counter and everybody's like, hurry up, hurry up.
I know, right? Which happens a lot. So I know we touched on mosques. Mosques already available.
Yes.
Like, I know a lot of people want to pray the Friday prayer, so they wouldn't have any problem finding a mosque.
Not at all. And even if you don't necessarily find a mosque, you are going to find like a prayer area, or you're literally going to see people like in the corner just praying for themselves. So it's really open. It's really easy.
Oh, fantastic. I think the two most important things for Muslim travelers, halal food and place to pray.
Yeah, exactly.
So you covered
the basics.
Yeah. Also, I think I want to touch upon, you went on your own to study for your master's. So would you say it's a safe place if solo Muslim women or a small group of Muslim women want to travel there?
To be honest, I've been to 38 countries and Singapore is where I felt the safest in all of the world. I've never felt safer than in Singapore. I think as well, like, maybe it's not good to say, but they have quite harsh penalties for crimes. And I think that kind of scares people, but also, there's a respect culture. I think people are really respectful of each other and travelers.
No, that's fantastic actually to know, because I think safety is very important. And obviously, if you're a solo person, then that makes it much more easier. So Singapore gets the safety tick. Yeah. In terms of traveling with the family, I know you said Sentosa Island is family friendly. Would you say Singapore is family friendly, easy to navigate with children for like exploring places?
Obviously, I haven't been since I had my daughter, so I can't like say first-hand experience, but like thinking about it, it would be a place that I would take like my family, because even if you want to go to the shopping malls, like they've got those little, those little cars you can hire, they push around, the little electric ones, things like that. Like, I'm not really a fan of zoos, to be honest, but they do have a really famous zoo and they do it quite nicely. Like, it's a conservation area rather than, animals in cages.
Yeah.
So if that's your thing, there are those kind of options.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, people might like it. So that's a good tip, actually, that you can. And they do have Universal Studios. So for older children, that can be a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
To take them and experience as well. So it's good.
Yeah, and even the younger ones, like there's a lot of, because it's called like the Garden City, there's like play areas or there's like little water parks because of the humid climate. So.
Yeah. It makes total sense. And I think it's fantastic because I know that a lot of families also live in Singapore from an expert perspective. So obviously they find something that's family friendly. I have two more questions for you. One of them, and I think you kind of mentioned it, is did you like the destination? Would you return to it as a family again?
Absolutely. If somebody offered me a job, I'd be on the flight tonight.
That's good to know. And the last one is, do you have any insider tips, anything that you would like to share about Singapore that people should know, like those quirky little things? I mean, we mentioned about the stores and the food. Can you think of anything else?
I think I have kind of like two general tips. The first one is about hotels. And I think unless you're taking a holiday like solely to relax, like for example, if you're going to the Maldives, then I don't think you should splash out so much money on the hotel. Like pick somewhere, if you're going like in a big city, maybe you want to pick somewhere that's got a good location. But at the end of the day, when people ask to see your travel pictures, they're not asking to see pictures of your hotel room. They're asking to see pictures of the experiences that you've done. Like you should spend your money on that, right?
True. Yeah, because when I was planning a holiday to Singapore, hotels were actually quite expensive. So is there a particular area that you would recommend to book a hotel for staying while you're in the city?
That's a difficult question because again, I think it depends on your priorities. Like if you wanted to stay on Sentosa and do the things there, or if you wanted to stay in the main Singapore. For example, when I stayed the first time, I stayed in the Shangri-La in Sentosa, and they have kind of a deal. If you sign up on their website, you get a member's discount. And all you need to do is sign up to their newsletter. So look out for things like that.
Okay.
But in kind of the main Singapore, you've got kind of hostels, or you've got like the big hotels. I'd say if you stayed a little bit further out, or even in like an Airbnb, you wouldn't kind of risk anything. You wouldn't risk losing out because it is a small island.
Okay, that's a good point, because then you can take the public transport and you can go. And you said you had 2 tips. What's your second tip?
My second tip is about flights. If you are looking for the flights and it comes up with a stopover, always check the price of the 2 single tickets, like to one destination, and then the second one like moving on, because I found so many times that the 2 single ticket is much cheaper than booking it with the stopover that they recommend. So always try different destinations, like book a flight from here to say Beijing and then Beijing to Singapore. Like it sounds like a crazy route, but it pays off.
That's fantastic tip, actually. Yes, because a lot of the time they do have that option depending on the airport. So that's a very good tip to save money on your flights. Thank you so much, Nico.
Yes, I'm all about saving money.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I want to spend more money on experiences rather than hotels or flights. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this talk, and all the tips you shared about Singapore. Please, guys, before you go, make sure that you check her YouTube channel. You will find it in the description below. And also don't forget to subscribe. But thank you so much, Nicolle. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. And I will see you next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much. Wa alaikum assalam.